Okay, it's official. Ilia Topuria is a straight up G. If there was ever any doubt that he caught Volk on a bad day or that he caught Volk on the heels of that Makachev KO, no. Ilia Topuria is a really bad man. You guys got my quick reaction there, but I want to hear from the experts. Danny, kick things off, man. Your reaction to Ilia Topuria knocking out Max Holloway. First one ever, by the way, that Max received.
Well, I'm waiting for the B-roll here to end because I want to see you guys' faces. And please, Kenny, do not single out a one shot. Bring back the 4-shot cold coffee. I need an apology from you, and you. Because all you guys last episode were thinking that I was crazy, this and that, and even got the chat going that, hashtag Danny be tripping. And I got accused of being on drugs and this and that. Well. Ilia Topuria is still UFC featherweight champion. He becomes the first man to knock out Max Holloway with no controversy whatsoever. And guess what's the talk of the town? Is Ilia Topuria the fighter of the year? Guys, I'm waiting.
You were right. For me too. I was wrong. Yeah, you deserve it.
Okay, no, Dan Tommy's absent from this because he did agree with me.
Yeah. Hey, Danny, how much did you make off of? Did you bet this fight?
I did not. No. But that hashtag Danny be tripping better be retired because, man, I called it. Look, knocking out Max Holloway is probably just as good as winning a UFC title. I mean, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, Justin Gaethje, the list goes on. Volkanovski, Jose Aldo, the list goes on of high-level elite strikers that haven't even come close. And this guy does it in under 3 rounds. I mean, this is just incredible. Ilia Topuria is a superstar. Ilia Topuria is not only a superstar, but also one of the best fighters walking right now on the planet, in my opinion. Number 2 or number 1 pound for pound. He's got to be up there. Historically speaking, one of the best talents we've seen at 145 pounds. I think you have to put him in the conversation as an all-time great, even just with 1 title defense. This guy is just incredible. He is a talent like never seen before, and we are just getting started, ladies and gentlemen. He is 27 years old, and we got several years left of Ilia Topuria being a top dog. So I am super excited for the future of 145 pounds, which we will get into in a second. But, dude, this guy's legit. This guy is as good as it comes. This guy's top of the line.
Goes, what's your reaction to Danny and the fight? I'm more anxious to come at Danny than to talk about the fight now, but go ahead.
I was going to ask Dan if he had his popcorn ready because I noticed that George was very quiet during that rant. Which he still got a little fire left in his belly. But I mean, my reaction was just, holy crap. I jumped out of my chair. I couldn't believe it. Like, the guy did exactly what he said he was going to do, right? Early on in that fight, Max Holloway did some good things. He did some things that kind of led me to believe that he could have been on his way to victory. But after a while, Topuria, man, he just hit every check mark. The guy just got his way in the exchanges. He kind of led Max to fight the type of fight that he needed to win. Like I said, I picked Max Holloway. It was one of those where I really kind of wanted to go the other way, but I just felt like, look, a guy like Max Holloway, he finds a way to get it done. I just don't know enough about Topuria yet to say he's going to do something like that, let alone KO him. I think that's what makes everything so insane. That night was just, it was a great night all around, but props to Ilia Topuria. This is a guy that's proven that he's going to be around for a long, long time. And to do something like that to Max Holloway, to see him in the press conference with that look on his face, like he just fought the Tasmanian devil or something. Like, I haven't seen that in a while, man. Props to Ilia Topuria. Props to you, Danny. We will eat our humble pie for breakfast today.
Oh, you got 1 fight right. Big deal. What about you, Dan Tom?
I was gonna say, well, I'm eating crow either way. You mentioned bet slips goes. Like, I don't know about you guys. I did bet this fight and the co-main event, and let's just say Ilia Topuria cleaned Max's clock and my bankroll out. So with the way Saturday went, this whole year has gone for me. I'm eating crow regardless. But so thank you, Danny, for not making me eat further crow, and props to Danny for the call. I will say the only thing I was, I guess, questioning was whether people with me or Danny's opinion would look crazy the morning after, and I think we're about to find that out. So I want to get out of the way. I just want to say one thing is that on the Ilia side, freaking cool that he came out with Sergio Ramos. I love that he dropped the rose. Is that a Vega from Street Fighter 2 for you 90s kids references out there? Is that like what Vega did in the game? Like that was so badass. Oh, that should make you a fan of Ilia right there. That was so cool. That being said, my heart is broken for the Max side. You think I would be used to this, guys? I've been watching the sport, as long, or if not almost as long as you guys. We got some real OGs on this panel, right? So I would be used to this with BJ Penn and watching all these guys happen before, but man, it doesn't get any easier, man. I was really heartbroken for Max. So got to say those two things.
All right. I'm the host. I really just want you guys to chime in, but I want to chime in because me and Danny did squabble a little bit last week. Ilia Topuria, I said it. He's a G. He looks great. He's undefeated. I enjoy progressing him, throughout my time doing the rankings all the way to number 1. And now I got decisions to make as far as pound for pound. See, that's where Danny, once again, loves to go overboard. He's saying number 1, number 2, like forgetting that Alex Pereira and Islam Makhachev exist. But fine. I'm going to consider it. I'm going to look at it and take a look and then make a fair decision like I always do. And as far as like greatest heavyweight featherweight of all time, I mean, he's on his way. He's looking good, but you got to slow down. We got to get through these title defenses. That's when the great ones separate themselves from the iconic ones, the legends, the Hall of Famers, right? It's these title defenses. How do you handle fame and power and preparation? Is the motivation there? Is the hunger there, right? You're making more money. You're getting distracted. You're getting pulled in different directions. Can you sustain that? The great ones have been able to do it. Some people can't. We'll see. Now he's got to get through Volk again. I see the B-roll there. Maybe I shouldn't go on to that part just yet, but he's probably gonna have to do a rematch there of the incumbent. And then there's still a few young guns that are waiting for him. Let's just slow our roll, and then we'll see. As far as Fighter of the Year 2024, I did say let the fight happen, and then we'll consider it. And I don't think we're ready to get into it just yet, but we'll get to it. It's part of the discussion. What's next for Topuria goes? Is it like you saw it, Volk, or had you been hoping that Diego Lopez might have a shot since he did weigh in as the alternate?
Look, the fan in me would want to see Diego Lopez. I think just a different challenge would be fun. But I think it's pretty clear, Dana White made it pretty clear. I think it's going to be Volk. It just seems like something they both want. They both feel like he deserves. Careful what you wish for, though, Volkanovski, man. Like, Topuria was a beast when you faced him. I think he's even worse now. But as a fan, I would kind of want to see a fresh matchup because I feel like we can get to that Volk matchup still. But yeah, it just seems like that's the way they're going to go. I will say this, though. Whatever's next, please make it in Spain. Please put it in a stadium. I can't remember which one of you guys brought that up about the Rose, but that is one of the most gangster things that I think it was Dan. You're right. Like Vega, dude, that's so cool, man. This guy is just oozing charisma, and I think he does deserve to call some shots now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think the panel all agrees Volk is next. Is there any love for Lopez here?
I got to give some love to Lopez, man. I think, look, I have so much respect for Volkanovski, and I do think he's got sort of that get out of jail free card whenever he wants to redeem it. So yes, if he wants the rematch with Ilia Topuria, I think he's deserving given the body of work that he's put on at 145 pounds. But Diego Lopez, if you ask me, like, what fight is more exciting? Like, what fight do I rather see right now? Which one am I willing to pay more money? I'm willing to pay more money for the Diego Lopez. I mean, that guy has a club in his hand, and he's going to meet in the middle of the octagon and throw down. So one, I feel like it's a more exciting fight. And two, I 100% agree with Go saying that this fight has to happen in Spain. How many times have we seen a fighter from a specific country take off, that country just completely blowing up with the fan base, yet the UFC refuses to take that person to where they're from? In this case, Spain has the infrastructure. Spain has everything. It's out there in Europe. So, like, it's very easy to travel to from other countries. The fan base is just dying for a UFC event. I think they can easily put on a stadium show with Ilia Topuria and absolutely knock it out of the park. And not only that, but if you're going to do that, I think it'd be smart to have a B-side that also speaks Spanish, that can also go on TV shows, radio shows in Spain and promote the fight. And that is Diego Lopez, who's extremely fluent in Spanish. It's almost as good as his Portuguese. That would be a very, very sellable fight. not only from the entertainment standpoint, but if you look at the media side of things, I think it would make a lot of sense to take Diego Lopez to Spain. Now, again, all the respect to Volkanovski, I just got to side with Diego Lopez here.
Dan? Look like you want to have some luck.
I just wanted to say that I agree with that. Not because I like Diego Lopez, which I do, but because I like Volkanovski. I hate this rematch for Volkanovski. I mean, I'm usually a person who's like, hey, and I agree with a lot of George's points, by the way, because I'm that guy where I'm like, let's see more. Calm down, everybody, relax. We'll get to it in the co-main event, but like
Danny's already got his Hall of Fame jacket ready. I mean, it's like slow down, let the career play out.
And we'll talk about in the co-main event, but it's like, okay, some finishes tell us nothing. I don't think that was the case with Topuria. Obviously, that was an amazing fight. But I'm about that Kool-Aid, right? I ultimately agree with Danny's points as far as like the greatness level and how much you weigh that. And as we saw with Max, like guys, it was so tough for Max to get back there, and we see this where it's almost like Doomsday, where they do the immediate rematch, where you're like, you're gonna not just perhaps exile this guy into the old Rich Franklin territory, which is a really dated reference, which is probably more Max Holloway, the more relevant one. But like not only that, like Volk suffered 2 KOs in a row that could be career altering. We're going to set him up for a potential third. Like, man, I don't know about you guys, but I grew up liking Bob Hoskins movies, and I feel like I'm watching Bob Hoskins get knocked out there. By the way, things you never thought about or unsee, Volkanovski is Bob Hoskins. Go watch a Bob Hoskins interview. Tell me that's not Alexander Volkanovski. It's in your head now.
All right. Moving on real quick to this whole who's the fighter of the year. It was posed to Dana White when he was there, and he said, hey, that's a good question. I'd have to look at the stats. So he didn't really give an answer, but more than anything, you could tell, at least obviously it was a good question to bring up. You got a guy that's won 2 fights, big ones, in Ilia Topuria, 2 legends he's taken out, right? Finishes, no discussions about decisions, judges, anything like that. And then you got Alex Pereira, who also has been starching, right? 3-0. Except 3's more than 2, but the 2 are more legendary names than the 3. So that's the way. So chat room, as Danny and I butt heads right now, I want to know from your end, who's your 2024 fighter of the year goes? And Dan, just kind of hang back and eat some popcorn. But chat room, tell me, in your opinion, who's the fighter of the year right now for 2024, right? January to December. Don't worry about how World MMA Awards does it. Just who do you think it is for 2024? Danny, I'll start with this. Max Holloway was asked, what if you win? This was prior, right? Mm-hmm. He says, quote, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know if they would do fighter of the year for me. The way Alex took fights, he's the fastest guy to defend his title, right? With 3 title defenses in 175 days. That's a hard man to beat. Every time I'm in the talks for it, somebody's having a crazy year. I think Alex Pereira has got the win in the bag already. And honestly, had he beaten Ilia, I think it would have been on par with what Ilia did. Ilia took out Max and Volk. Max would have taken out Ilia. Maybe he doesn't have the stature of the other guys yet, the legendary statures of Volk and Holloway, but obviously we know he's a G. And Justin Gaethje, who I don't believe had been knocked out either. I can't remember. He might have actually by Eddie Alvarez, but still, that BMF win was epic, right? So that was his stance. You could just tell 2's not more than 3, pal.
Yeah, but you gotta weigh the victory. What then? Kevin Holland should be fighter of the year whenever he's fighting. He's 5
not in the
times
conversation.
a year.
No, I'm not gonna let that one go by, and I'll tell you why. Because
no, I mean,
go, hey, Jordan has 6, and Kobe's got 5. I got this fucking friend named Scott Holloway. I'm gonna give him a shout out, but this guy's a dimple on my ass. I swear to God, he always goes, well, then Robert Horry should have more than Michael Jordan because he's got 7. He always says that dumb shit. See, here's the thing. Robert Horry's not in the conversation, and neither is Kevin Holland. We're talking about Pereira and Ilia.
And I'm telling you why I feel like that logic is flawed. Just more doesn't mean better. It just doesn't. What is more difficult? If you had to map out the year, what is more difficult? To go in a year and put away or defeat Drew Prochaska, Jamal Hill, and Khalil Roundtree. And first of all, you know what, George? First of all, Ankalaev. We're going to get into that in a minute, right? He's been the #1 contender this entire year. And guess who hasn't fought him? Poatan. Again, not a fault of his own. I think the UFC had to do a lot of that. But you're telling me the guy that didn't fight the toughest challenge in his division for an entire year is going to get fighter of the year over somebody that knocked out two of the greatest featherweights to ever exist in one calendar year, knocking him out, Max Holloway, and becoming the first man to put him away. I'm sorry, if Ankalaev maybe would have been there instead of Roundtree, if Ankalaev would have been there maybe instead of Jamal Hill, maybe this conversation, I think I'd be entertaining it a little bit more. But keeping in mind that it's 3 wins over guys that only 2 of them won a belt and none of them were able to defend it. And then on top of that, you didn't fight the number 1 contender in the division. Sorry, that does not surpass what it means to knock out Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway, literally number 2 and number 3 greatest featherweights of all time. I cannot put, well, all the respect, but I cannot put Roundtree, I cannot put Jamal Hill or Jiri Prochaska, not even in a top 10 greatest light heavyweights of all time.
I would agree with all that, but it's still a third fight, and you can never take these fights. You can't like just dismiss them. You saw the close call that, for example, John Jones had with like an OSP, right? Or with an Alexander Gustafsson. Alexander Gustafsson isn't a top 10 light heavyweight either, but he came close. A lot of us didn't think Dominic Reyes could, rise to the occasion on the night he did, or Thiago Santos against John Jones. I'm picking John Jones because we're talking about elite fighters.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone can always have those close calls, but it's until you have that fight that, Amanda Nunes, who would have thought she would have lost to Juliana? It's a third fight that you still got to take. He did it in 175 days. He did it when he didn't want to, right? He did it as a company man. He had broken toes. He was in Australia when they called him to come back to Connecticut to prepare for a fight. I think in Las Vegas. That's a lot of time zone. That's a lot of mind fucking, but he still did it. He rose to the occasion. I don't know, man. It's close. I don't know if anyone kept track of the chat. Maybe I can go back and recap and see. But like I say, Max Holloway kind of had my back a little bit. And I feel like Dana felt like it's a conversation. Danny was right. He got the pick right. He got the KO right. Everything, right? He deserves that praise in those fighters. I had a problem with Danny saying it ain't even a conversation.
It's just far more impressive. Like, yes, I get the broken toe. I get the traveling and this and that. But like at the end of the day, this is a sport. We're talking about what weighs more sporting wise, and what Ilia Topuria has done in 2024 is far outweighs what has done Poatan in this laps in this year. Again, impressive. I'm not saying it's not, but how can you give fighter of the year to a guy that hasn't even fought the guy that everyone thinks that he's the number 1 contender that he could beat? That he could potentially get beaten by in Ankalaev. And meanwhile, Ilia Topuria is not there asking for easy fights. Volkanovski and Max Holloway. Sorry, George, I still stand on this hill, and I'm ready to die on this hill. It is not even close. Ilia Topuria is fighter of the year. That's it. Let's listen to this other 2 guys. See if maybe
Goes and Dan, what do you guys think? Who's your early fighter of the year between these 2?
Look, George, I mean, I kind of get the logic on the other side, but you're a big sports fan, and this happens in other sports all the time. There's strength of schedule, right? When you're ranking them college football teams, if you went through Oregon and Ohio State, people are going to look at that as being stronger than if you just went through 3 other ranked opponents. It's just it's tougher. And to top it all off, I guess the equivalent in college sports is maybe going to their home and doing it, because this dude got finishes in both fights over guys that just, Max Holloway never gets finished like that. What he did is phenomenal, and we may never see something like that again. So I'm with Danny. I'm just not with Danny in the there is no discussion thing. I'm on his hill, but I'm kind of like one step below. But I'm not hating anybody that says it's Poatan. Like, I get it. That is also very tough to do what he did. But Danny makes good points too. Like the one guy that we all feel like would give him the biggest challenge, he hasn't faced that guy. It's not his fault, but it hasn't happened. As we're at featherweight, they literally gave him the 2 toughest guys you could possibly give him, and he buzzed right through them. It's hard to deny that, man.
Sorry, Dan Tom?
Yeah, I think you guys did a good job actually discussing the quantity over quality, which is important, whether we're talking about pound for pound rankings or fighter of the year, these kind of arguments, we love to have. That being said, I kind of, sentiment what Go said, where, again, I'm not going to change what I said, even though I picked Holloway. I agree with Danny last week, right? The only part where I had a little bit of pushback, where I was like, well, even though I don't think it should, it should be as much, it's obviously going to be a conversation if we look at even just our own context, not everybody else. Look at MMA Junkie, right? We voted especially me, if I want to keep my same energy. The only 2 times I was really passionate about fight of the year, you guys know, was for 2 Brazilians who I still think should have got it. Charles Oliveira in 2021 and Alexandre Pantoja. And part of those, I want to say is the context, right? The context and the story does play a role. How much of it we can argue, but it does, right? If you thought Michael Bisping was your fighter of the year, which I agree, that was a great pick, right? When he beat Rockhold 2016 or whatever, then you are by turn acknowledging that, yeah, the context and the story played into it because the one eye, the short notice, having to do that. And Sean Strickland had a little bit of that, not as glamorous as Poetan's or Bisping's, but he was taking fights, the Abbas, on the strength of the year in which We MMA Junkie gave him that award, right? It was very similar context to Poetan. So if we look at it, whether how the Gen Pop or how us at Junkie tend to rank this, absolutely Poetan's in the discussion and absolutely doesn't surprise me at all. So for me, yeah, I do believe there is a conversation to be had, but where I stand, I do stand ultimately on the Topuria side as far as who I would cast my vote for.
Guys, if you can help me out, I'm going to single a couple guys out in the chat. And if you guys see a couple, maybe you can chime in. We do have to move on. Joseph Boza, though, did say, to me, it's Ilia. He beat 2 of the best at 145. But Billy 247 says 3 fights and camps in 6 months is the harder feat, not taking anything away from Topuria. What's next for Holloway? You want to take this one, goes real quick?
Next for Holloway, that's tough.
55.
Dude. I mean, look, for sure, I don't want to hear anything about featherweight, and I think he's kind of on that same page. Go up to 155 and really just develop yourself. I thought he looked really good there. I think that's his future. Look, the name that always gets thrown out is Conor McGregor. I kind of just don't want to be that guy because we just don't know when that guy's ever going to come back. But he kind of liked the Poirier fight. That seemed to interest him. I'm okay with something like that, but definitely 155 and a little bit of
the BMF. He still has the BMF title too.
Does he though? Does he? That should be another discussion.
That's a good debate as well.
When does that ever happen, guys? Like if you're the man in high school, right? And you go out there and you fight somebody and you get lit up. I mean, that's just the new BMF on campus, right? He's walking around. He's got to win over you. He's now the man. Like not giving him that title is almost like the equivalent of saying, "Hey, I wasn't ready." Like that doesn't fly. Like, I'm sorry, he's just not the BMF anymore in my eyes.
I do want to give credit to Holloway. He said, I had a great camp. I wasn't injured. I was healthy. He didn't make excuses. I love hearing stuff like that, man. He gave all the praise to Topuria. And I do want to say something quick about Topuria. He gave all the praise to his opponent. He was very respectful. He's very cocky leading in, but we want these guys to sell the fights, right? But in the end, he was very respectful to Holloway. So I enjoyed that part of them keeping it really, really real. So many times we hear, oh, I was dinged up, I had this, I had that, and we haven't heard that here